extras in case any of you wanted one and didn't get it. Again, I highly recommend if you get a study guide. Like, you need a study guide. So, just again, reiterating the way that the scores, I'm sorry, I'll close up the line. The way the scores are. Okay, sorry about that with the blinds. Just to reiterate what I was talking about last week with our the way that the AP exam is scored, that it is a sliding score. They give the top scoring kids, like the top 10 to 15% are fives and scaled on back. So, and I told you part of the awesomeness and the sadness of APUSH is that a lot of kids take this test and they don't and have not been instructed in how either to take the test or write a DBQ or anything else, or they didn't get very far in their coursework. That is always to our advantage. So I feel bad for people that you know that are taking APUSH and haven't even gotten to World War I yet, but that's to our advantage because that puts us on that sliding scale that we know stuff that they don't. I will tell you that for the most part, when we read DBQs, I get a stack of 9, and maybe in that stack of 9, there's 2 good ones, and then all the others are bad. It again is why our scores, and when I say ours, I mean APUSH students and AP Euro students, usually are above the mean or the global average in the writing part. I can tell you where it always falls down is in the multiple choice, because why? I can't make you study. I can teach you how to write, and I can teach you all the things on how to write the mechanics, but I cannot make you study so that you know the material. And it always shows up on the multiple choice. So when I get my data back from we are, as a class, year after year after year after year, above the global and the mean average in SAQs, in long essays, and DBQs. Not by a bunch, but enough that it is more. Where we fall behind, those multiple choice questions. And again, what? No, it does not show you names. It doesn't show individual. It shows you as a class. So it shows as a class. I don't get anything individual. So as a class, it shows. So, yeah. So I feel really good about that because I've done my job. And that means you guys got to do yours and study. So that's my TED Talk of the day. All right, so let's get back into World War II and look at page 10. For those of you that really like movies, and you like history movies, and you like old history movies, and you actually have either real cable, like you still have DirecTV or Dish. Oh, no, I can't think of the name of the... No, it's not. If you have Direct, it's the one right under that shows old movies. I can't. I'll find out the name of it. There's a movie that comes on regularly called The Man That Never Was, and it is about. It is a factual history movie about creating an identity of a man to. So that the Germans think that the invasion from Northern Africa is going to be in Sicily, but it's somewhere else. It's one of the best movies. I watched it again for like the 20th time. Yes.
Brooklyn brought up a good point. We haven't had a candy day in a long time.
What, this 9 weeks?
Yeah.
We get ice cream.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah, we do ice cream after the exam. Yeah.
Like Scoops ice cream? Or
No, like
bars.
ice cream bars.
Okay.
Yes.
Ice cream bars?
Yes, I buy like 10 different kinds. So all different kinds. Ice cream sandwiches, fudgesicles, Eskimo pies, dreamsicles, nutty bars.
What's an Eskimo pie?
It's the ones that have the chocolate coating with the little nuts on it. What? Yes. I call them Eskimo pies. I don't know what they're called. So we do that the Monday we come back. We go outside and we eat ice cream.
It's gonna snow tomorrow.
Don't want to talk about that. We're talking about the Battle of Britain. All right. On page 10, we begin. Yes, it is. We begin on page 10, the Battle of Britain. What?
Oh, well,
Like you do.
you will.
Yeah, I have to get cards. It better not snow.
All right, page 10, Battle of Britain. This is the essential part of World War II that defines the British. It defines and especially defines the first real stop of the German army. So far, the German army has been able to take Czechoslovakia. They've taken Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Norway, Sweden, and France with very little pushback. France has been really about the only one that's been able to provide any pushback, but it takes essentially very little effort from the Germans. So then the German eye turns to invading Great Britain. The English Channel and any other parts of the water surrounding Great Britain is fairly easy to navigate, to get across. But what the German what Hitler's plans are first is to bomb the heck out of Germany and to make them surrender so that they do not have to have an amphibious invasion of an island, which is one of the most difficult military actions to plan, to bring about. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. So Hitler does not want to have to invade. They want to pound Britain into submission. And so the way they begin is first giving demands. So on page 10, those demands that Hitler says to Great Britain: give us back all of our colonies, agree to Germany's domination of continental Europe. And that's where Britain says, nope, not agreeing to that. Great Britain categorically refuses. Absolutely not. We are not giving in that you have dominion of continental Europe. So Hitler orders German bombers to attack the Royal Air Force. So what they are doing in this battle for Britain is they are attempting to knock out the Royal Air Force. So everywhere where the Royal Air Force planes sit on a runway or a tarmac, that's what they're going to bomb. And they will also begin bombing London as a second fork of this strategy, is to bring about submission from the people. That at some point the people of Great Britain will say, this is too much, we can't take it anymore. Whatever Hitler wants, tell him so that we can stop. So the Battle of Britain begins with the bombing of London. If any of you have seen that first movie, The Chronicles of Narnia, that first snippet of that movie where they're in their house and they're running to get into the bomb shelter, that is what happens to London night after night after night after night. It is continually bombed. At this point, Churchill and the powers that be have asked the king and the queen and the two princesses to evacuate and go to Canada. This is too intense. You guys have to leave. The king says, nope, not leaving. We're staying in Buckingham Palace. And again, not being condescending, but just making sure that you understand, Buckingham Palace is in the center of London, right? It's not outskirts. They're getting bombed nightly, just like everyone else, which again is a moral, upbeat call kind of thing for the rest of Londoners, that the king is in this with us. And it is a nightly bombing with great regularity, with absolutely no rhyme or reason where these bombs fall. Civilians are going to die with great regularity. What happens is when Hitler changes from bombing the Royal Air Force to bombing London, it gives the Royal Air Force a chance to regroup. It is one of the first of his many fatal blunders. I'm also going to throw out there, any of you operating under the misconception that Adolf Hitler was a smart guy, he's not a smart guy. He's never took an IQ test. No one knows what his IQ is, but he is stupid. And everyone that lives after that had any association with him remarks about his stupidity, that he does not listen to anybody around him. He makes his own decisions, and they are bad. This is the first one. When he switches from the tactic that was given to him by his military advisors. One of the ways, again, to prepare to invade England is to get rid of its Air Force. You can't have any of those. Bomb the heck out of the Royal Air Force. That's what they were doing. They were being successful. When he changed the tactic to bombing London, it allowed the Royal Air Force to regroup. And the RAF is going to recover. And at the end, the RAF will defeat the German Air Force. Plans are canceled for the German invasion. And Winston Churchill leaps and bounds on this leadership issue. I think one of the things that when we're looking at just U.S. history that we miss with Winston Churchill is prior to his ascension as prime minister during this time period, he was not a very well-liked person, and he had a tremendous amount of failures, a lot of failures. One in particular, Gallipoli, his planning of that invasion was horrific. So he needed this morale booster, as did the British themselves. While all of this is happening, in September of 1940, Japan is added to the Rome-Berlin Axis for mutual defense and military support. And our policy toward Japan increasingly grows confrontational, and that, again, is one of the reasons Japan is seeking this out. Germany and Italy expand into the Balkans, North Africa, Greece, Yugoslavia, Egypt. So eventually, the Germans are going to have all of Northern Africa. Northern Africa will be the first places where we put American boots on the ground. It is the only place that there is any opportunity to push back on the Germans. The top of page 11. Remember that non-aggression pact Stalin signed? Guess what? June 1941, Hitler invades the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is ill-prepared. They are taken unawares, and with the push into a living space, or Lebensraum, a living space for Germans. We have so many Germans, we need to take over other countries to put Germans there. And Hitler's advance are going to halt outside of Moscow, and we will begin the siege of Leningrad. That's going to last for 2 years. The siege of Leningrad lasts 2 years. The Germans, when we get towards the end and we begin our quick discussion about the Holocaust and the genocide and the extermination of Jews, one of the things that's necessary to add to that is the other groups of people that Hitler targeted as well. He targeted disabled people, mentally disabled, physically disabled, homosexuals, Seventh-day Adventists, gypsies. There are a lot of other people included in the group that is targeted for extermination. I think one of the most awful, sad stories about a non-Jew exterminated is a preacher in the Lutheran Church. His last name is Bonhoeffer, who uses his pulpit to speak out constantly because at one point Hitler's going to nationalize the churches, and the priests have to preach state-sponsored propaganda from the pulpit, and he refuses to do that time and time again. His whole family are Nazis. He gets put in a concentration camp and will be executed the day before that concentration camp is liberated. Those of you interested, especially any of you interested as a study of religion and the power of religion, bless you. It is a very inspiring story, even though Bonhoeffer is going to die. The other group of people that he deals with and the German Reich deals with horrifically are Poles and Russians, and they view them as second-class citizens. Millions and millions of Russians are going to be put in concentration camps to be worked to death. They will just be literally worked to death. And when we get to May of 1945 and this push to Berlin, one of the things that's going to be horrific to people that live in Berlin is that the Russians are going to get there first. And the Russians wreak havoc on the city of Berlin. They rape and kill thousands of women. They brutalize the citizens of Berlin. Not that they might not deserve some of it, but the Russians deal with the Germans horrifically, and most of it is due to this treatment of the Germans as they push into the Soviet Union. The United States will be supporting the Soviet Union. They're going to send $11 billion of lend-lease aid to the Soviets, and again, Russian invasion was Hitler's second fatal error, opened a second front before Britain was subdued. And again, this is the exact same thing that Napoleon does and marks his demise as well. So, what is the United States doing in all this time period during the war in Europe when the United States is not a participant in war? One of the first things is this arsenal of diplomacy speech that he gives December 29th, 1939, proclaimed the U.S. could not remain neutral. Its independence had never been in such danger. So we recognize we're in danger. And Hitler's purpose is this world domination. And FDR says to the people of the United States, we might not be fighting in this war, but we have to fight this idea of Nazi world domination. This is the speech that marks the entrance into the United States. And the United States becomes the great warehouse of the Allies. So we are not actually fighting this war, but we are supplying every allied nation with the necessary arsenal, which is why it's the arsenal of democracy, that they need to defeat the Germans. Boots, canteens, guns, tanks, ships, ammunition, planes, anything that we can do to provide aid will be done. Please also note that date, 1939, this is the beginning of the United States getting out of the Great Depression. All of our factories retool itself to produce weapons of war. We're building airplanes, we're building ships, guns, tanks. Everything is being now re-geared toward helping the Allies fight off Nazism. U.S. response to the fall of France and the Battle of Britain. Fall of France forced a major change in strategy for the United States. The United States is probably going to have to fight more and not just be the great warehouse. And we know at some point that we are going to have to get into this war. FDR called on America to build a large Air Force and a 2-ocean Navy. And that, again, is important. Congress is going to appropriate $37 billion, 5 times larger than any New Deal budget. And September 1940, Congress passed the Selective Service and Training Act. It is our first peacetime draft. Have we talked about selective service, gentlemen, right? That you guys all have to fill out that little 10-minute thing online. Don't do it until you talk to your parents, but you do have to do it if you're going to get any government aid for college of any time. It is our first peacetime draft. Men 21 to 35 were registered, and many were called for 1 year of military training. And then eventually that, again, is going to take precedent. Havana Conference in 1940, U.S. agreed to share with 20 Latin American republics the responsibility of upholding the Monroe Doctrine. First time the Monroe Doctrine is unilateral. Internationalism. Committee to defend America by aiding our allies. Again, most potent of the pro-war intervention, claimed the United States couldn't let the Axis power dominate the world, urged direct aid to Great Britain. Again, at this point, Britain is standing by itself against the full power of Nazi Germany. We still have, on page 12, isolationist. And isolationists, again, are called America First. In this America First Committee, England will fight to the last American, and that means we are not getting involved in that. Advocated U.S. protection of its own shores if Hitler defeated Great Britain. Like, if Britain goes down, it goes down. Our job is to defend our shores first, hence that title, America First. Charles Lindbergh, most famous of these isolationists, and Charles Lindbergh quite a few times talked about how great Hitler was and Nazism. And that group of people are going to hold on to that for quite some time. September 2nd, 1940, FDR agreed to transfer to Great Britain 50 of our World War I class destroyers. So we're going to move those kind of depleted old ships to Great Britain. Britain promised U.S. 8 valuable defense bases sites from Newfoundland to South America. So we're going to let you use our territory for bases. And these bases are going to be in control for 99 years. We hold on to those. We still have them. Agreement achieved by a simple presidential agreement. Critics charge FDR had circumvented Congress and trying to get us into the war. Page 12, election of 1940. This is a really big election for FDR. Republicans nominated Wendell Willkie. Boy, I'm glad we never had President Wendell Willkie. Just saying. That sounds like a cartoon name. Accused FDR of being a dictator. Democrats nominated FDR for his 3rd term. So this is now stepping out of that precedent set by Washington. We are about to have a president for the first time in our history be elected to a 3rd term. FDR vowed to keep the U.S. out of the war. Ooh, he doesn't keep that promise. Vigorously defended the New Deal, and the result, FDR defeated Willkie 449 to 82, much closer than his other elections, but still a vast majority. Most importantly, Democrats maintained their majority in Congress. That is the most important part in this 1940 election. Had Roosevelt won and Republicans taken over in Congress, we probably would have had a different outcome in those next few years. FDR gives another one of his most famous speeches. It is his 4 freedom speeches made to Congress. Now elected, FDR did not have to worry about his critics. And the 4 freedom speeches on the top of page 13, freedom of speech and expression, freedom of religion, freedom from want, freedom from fear. This is not the Constitution. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. It is a separate 4 freedoms speech. Those of you that perhaps see and look around at a lot of things, this is represented by a Norman Rockwell painting of a Thanksgiving dinner of a lady, like an old grandma kind of lady, putting this big giant turkey on a platter in front of her family. Those of you that love the TV show Modern Family, and if you've watched a lot of them, this is when Alex is doing her art production and the family is participating in it, and they're all sitting around the 4 and everything goes wrong. If you don't watch Modern Family, it is like the best show. I don't say that lightly. I have like 2 or 3 shows that I say best shows. The Office, Modern Family. Modern Family is an amazing show. But these 4 freedom speeches, or this 4 freedom speech, especially freedom from want, that goes with our Great Depression, and freedom from fear, that attacks the war. Congress responded with Lend-Lease. So on page 13, the Lend-Lease program increased U.S. involvement in the European War. Considered one of the most monumentous laws ever passed by Congress. You will have questions or have to write about the Lend-Lease program. I can almost guarantee you. What are the provisions? authorized the president to give military supplies to any nation he deemed vital to the defense of the United States. That is a significant amount of power to give to a president. British rapidly exhausting their cash reserves. Accounts would be settled after the war. FDR says, loan a neighbor your hose to save his house from a fire, worry about the hose later. We have to save Great Britain. We'll worry about the money later. Criticism, isolationists, they have not gone away yet. Anti-Roosevelt Republicans saw it as a blank check. Some saw it as getting the U.S. even closer to involvement. The results of the Lend-Lease program are significant, and this is the reason why you need to know this. It ends our neutrality. There is no doubt on which side of this war that we are settling ourselves. It is an economic declaration of war against Germany. U.S. war production immediately increased, and then Hitler began sinking our ships. We do not declare war on Germany. Ever, ever, ever do we declare war on Germany. They declare war on us. So this result of the Lend-Lease is that Germany does take this as a threat. By war's end, the United States gives $50 billion worth of arms and equipment to nations fighting aggressors, especially Britain and the Soviet Union. So now we start the patrol of the Western Atlantic. In April 1941, FDR starts the American Neutrality Patrol. U.S. would search but not attack German submarines and would warn British vessels of their location. Hopefully you understand how dangerous that is. That is very provocative, and it is going to result in some very interesting activity. FDR ordered Navy vessels to escort Lend-Lease shipments to Iceland. British takes them the rest of the way. A lot of ships are going to be sunk. Finally, in September, FDR proclaims a shoot-on-sight policy of German U-boats. A U-boat is a submarine. It is, at this time still, no sonar, no radar. Great Britain is going to get radar first, which is going to help them in their cause for keeping Britain safe from air attacks. November 1941, Congress proclaimed merchant ships could now be armed and enter combat zones. The first one will be the Reuben James. April 1941, U.S. forces occupy Greenland, and July 1941, occupation of Iceland to protect it from Germany. All right, big, giant box on page 14 around Atlantic Conference and Atlantic Charter. This is really very important in regards to what's going to happen during the war and especially what's going to happen after the war. So it is a secret meeting. So secret, we don't know about it till much years later. FDR Churchill meet on a U.S. ship off Newfoundland. Newfoundland is in Canada. It's a first of series of conferences between just the two of them. They have phones linked up to each other where they talk to each other all the time. This is held in response to Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. At this point, Churchill knows things are going bad. Roosevelt knows we have to get involved. How is all this going to be planned? So what they write is called the Atlantic Charter. It's called the Atlantic Charter because it takes place in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You need to know all four of these things. Accepted by Churchill and FDR and endorsed later by Stalin. Stalin is not invited to any of these things. The three things that they agree to: no territorial changes contrary to the wishes of the inhabitants themselves. So we're going back to those 14 points of Wilson saying we're not redrawing maps after World War II like we did World War I. No one's going to get new territory. No one's going to be pushed into other places, kind of like Alsace and Lorraine. We are going to let the people determine how their country's boundaries exist. Government abolished by dictators would be regained. So all that territory that Hitler has taken, everybody's going to get it back. And then essentially, number 4 is the big one, called for a permanent system of general security. This was Wilson's League of Nations. now going to be known as the United Nations. And again, this is essential as we look not only to the rest of World War II, but what's going to happen afterwards. Reaction liberals applauded the charter, and isolationists, nope, don't want to get involved again. All right, really quick, we got to escalate things with Japan. Japan's conquest of Asia resulted in tension with the United States. So the United States has two areas that they are focused on. Nothing that is happening in Europe. Nothing. Great Britain is not concerned about Japan. Germany's not concerned about Japan. Nobody's looking at that except the Soviet Union and Japan. So Japan is doing all of this without anybody checking any responses. The only people paying attention is the United States. United States refused to recognize the territory that they invaded in Manchuria and renamed. They condemned the Chinese attack or Japanese attack on China. The quarantine speech aimed at Japan on the top of page 15. Japan outlined the proposed Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. When you see that big giant name, what that means is Japan wants everything. There is no co-prosperity, no East Asia. This is Japan. They want a vast empire in East Asia and the Western Pacific. Their goal is to take over all of that. Embargo of 1940 passed by Congress against Japan. So this is the beginning of our aggressive economic policies toward Japan that they see as provocation toward war. Following the fall of France, Japan got the right from Vichy France to build air bases and to station troops in northern French Indochina. French Indochina is modern-day Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. So Germany does not want anything in Asia. Japan joins that axis so that they can say, hey, Germany, can we have all of France's territory in Asia? Germany says, sure, we don't want them. So they start building bases in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, which is at that time French Indochina. We now place an embargo on the exportation of aviation gasoline, not just gasoline, but aviation, lubricants, scrap iron, and steel to Japan. Lubricants are important, and again, not being condescending, but machines that have moving parts need lubricants and gaskets. We do not have any synthetic gaskets or synthetic lubrication. Everything has to be made from rubber. So we say we're not allowing any of those to go into Japan. In December, extended the embargo, iron ore, pig iron, chemicals, machine tools. And at that point, in September, Japan is going to sign that again. They all agreed to support each other if attacked by the United States. In early 1941, FDR moved the U.S. Pacific Fleet from the West Coast to Pearl Harbor. Oh, that was so dumb. The entire fleet in one spot. Dumb, dumb, dumb. Just so that you know, we don't ever do that again. We never, ever, ever, ever do that again. Our aircraft carriers cycle in and out. So in San Diego, there's always an aircraft carrier based, and when a new one comes in, the old one goes out. So we always have an aircraft carrier out at sea. We always have an aircraft carrier home ported. In San Diego, there'll be one up in Washington. There's Jacksonville, Norfolk, Bath, Maine. Those things rotate in and out. So if you ever join the Navy and you get attached to an aircraft carrier, 6 months in, 6 months out. Now I think they're going to 8 months, 8 months in, 8 months out, which is awesome if you love that life. It is hard to have a family in the Navy because of that. It is very hard, that rotation. Embargo of 1941. In July, Japan gained new concessions from Vichy France. Again, in Indochina, U.S. freezes the assets. This is the big one. Two big things. We freeze their assets in the United States. So any Japanese asset, any money they have in banks, Anywhere they have money, we freeze it. You can't get your money out. We also closed the Panama Canal to Japan. You can't go through. Not that they had really tried, but you can't go through. Activated the Philippine militia and placed embargo on oil and other vital parts to Japan. And so then, Japanese-U.S. negotiations, Japan offered withdrawal from southern Indochina if the United States resumed economic relations. We think about that, but we demand they would withdraw. Promise not to attack, no agreement are reached, negotiations, an attempt by the U.S. to buy time, because we're trying to get all of our stuff into the Philippines. October 1941, Tojo becomes prime minister, and that is a key. When Tojo becomes prime minister, that is a rapidly deteriorating situation between the United States. Japan decided if no agreement by November 25th, Japan would attack the United States, which again is why that is not a surprise. It is just when and where. We know we're going to be attacked. So, Japanese decision to attack made during an unsuccessful negotiation with the United States on December 1st. War is inevitable. Felt surprise attack would cripple the United States, and it does a really good job at that. Japanese war plan is very simple. Take the Dutch East Indies, Malaya, Philippines to gain oil and raw materials. Attack Pearl Harbor would destroy the U.S. Pacific Fleet, and it almost does. U.S. experts cracked the top secret code and expect Japan to attack in early December, but the Dutch East Indies or Malaya, not Pearl Harbor. One of the reasons we don't think Pearl Harbor is how far away Pearl Harbor is and how far away that air support would have to be. Evidence that FDR knew about Pearl Harbor unsubstantiated and misleading. We know that we're going to be attacked. We just picked the wrong place and we don't know the time. So Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, 7:55 on a Sunday morning. And second wave will come at 8:50 a.m. And it is a horrific attack. Japanese sink or badly damaged all 8 battleships, all of them gone, including the Oklahoma and the Arizona. Damaged 10 other ships, destroyed 188 planes. So when we think about Pearl Harbor, we don't have a branch of the military yet called the Air Force. That doesn't exist. It's called the Army Air Corps, but they have their planes sitting on the tarmac. They are also a target of the airstrikes to destroy all those planes on the ground. They are really successful. They destroy 188 planes. Over 2,500 Americans will be killed. Many of them will be suffer from being burned to death, which again is a horrific way to die. 1,100 wounded. 3 aircraft carriers are going to escape because they are out at sea that morning on maneuvers. Japanese losses much, much smaller, very minuscule. Roosevelt asked Congress for a declaration of war against Japan on December 8th, a day that will live in infamy. Congress quickly complies, 1 vote for no. And so we declare war on Japan. And as that happens, Germany and Italy will declare war on the United States. Again, big giant mistake by Hitler, because Germany did not have to declare war on the United States. They did not have to declare war, because now what happens is Churchill convinces FDR, help us get Germany first. And so instead of the United States focusing all of its attention on the person and the country that attacked them, that becomes a secondary part of the war. The first front and the main push is in Europe. And that's because, again, Germany declared war on the United States. U.S. increased its troop size from 2 to 12 million by 1946. All right? Yay, got that done. Our test is going to be on Friday. And I have not given